Live. We are live. It is Thursday, the 10th of September, 2020. It's 9:30 in the Republic of Ireland and the British Isles. And you're watching Broadsheet on the Telly. You're very welcome. After a little bit of a break, we took a couple of weeks off so we could top up our suntan in a government-approved location. And we are back for the autumn-winter schedule, as they say. We didn't make it to the RTE guide this year. They just didn't have the column space, but we don't need the RTE guide to promote Broadsheet on the Telly. Joining me on the panel tonight, as always, is the ever-reliable. I'm going to flip a coin to see who goes first. No, I'm not. I'm very chivalrous. We're going to go to Crumlin.
The captain's log.
Captain's log. So the Queen of Crumlin, the Countess of Crumlin, the Dame of Dublin 12.
Oh gosh,
Vanessa Foran, how are you doing, Vanessa?
Hi everyone, I'm good. Is that you're drinking out of a keg of Guinness there? Hi everybody. Yes, show back at the winter starting's coming in. Winter's coming. I don't know where we're going to start with all the news of the last month, but it's good to be back.
It gives me anxiety thinking about where we're going to start with all the news. That's for sure. And of course, I thought we wouldn't be able to see him tonight because he'd be covered in an orange filter. Our mattress king himself, the California cowboy. He's got so many names, we could just reel them off all night. Derek O'Donoghue. Well, Derek.
Hey, Neil. Hi, Vanessa. Good to be back.
Hi.
And it's good to be live, but more importantly, it's good to be still alive.
Oh,
we started
this
so long ago. I remember the first week I came on with this show. We had just entered shelter in place over here in Santa Clara County. And Neil contacted me just to see what was going on, because we were sort of ahead of the posse with you guys. That seems like a lifetime ago now. And not only have we still got COVID, not only have we still got Donald Trump, we now have these wildfires, and it's depressing, because at least with COVID we could go for a walk, stuff like that. Like now you just don't want to leave the house. The smoke is just so bad. But it's good to be back at Broadsheet, so I don't want to depress people straight away.
It's not not to poke fun, Derek, but you weren't as keen to not leave the house with a global pandemic running around California, but suddenly there's a smell of smoke in the air and you're staying indoors. Is there a disconnect there between safety, or what's going on in the California psyche?
Social distance, Neil. You keep your distance. The fresh air is good. It's okay to go and go for a walk. Up on a hiking trail, there's nobody near you, you're perfectly safe. But you try to go for a walk in this thing at the moment, and like you can just feel on your lungs. I don't smoke, so but it feels like I'm smoking like 100 cigarettes. That's the way I feel after like a small walk. So literally just not going outside the door.
Yeah, and to be fair, we posted pictures on this, or we personally, the pictures were posted on the site from San Francisco yesterday. I had some friends send me some pictures. One friend, her family home was burning, and showed pretty epic scenes, like something from a Hollywood movie. So do stay safe in your D4 area in the Bay Area, Derek.
Yeah. Now we're okay where we are at the moment. We're as safe as can be expected, but a week ago we did get our emergency kit ready, and we did have an escape route planned as abundance of caution. Just it was about maybe 4 or 5 miles away from us, and maybe 7 miles away from us, and there was just a little anxiousness that it could come this direction, but thankfully it hasn't. And I just have to give a shout out to the firefighters. Obviously, your heart goes out to people like your friend who's losing their homes, and people who have to evacuate and leave their belongings behind, and the stress and the terrifying nature that is. But have to give a shout out to the firefighters who are trying to keep everybody safe and fighting in horrendous conditions. And similarly, because of COVID, prisoners have been released from prisons. And what they used to do when wildfires happened here was get the cons out to supplement the fire department. So some of the firefighting team were convicts But now, because they've released convicts because of COVID, the firefighters are down in numbers, and they haven't got the numbers to fight the fires. But they're brave men and women who are risking their lives, like as I said, to keep people safe.
Yeah, do keep us updated if you've as that goes on, Derek, and we hope you and the family stay safe. So it's not just a killer virus you have to worry about at the moment. It's pretty tragic. But looking to matters back at home, God, there's been a very busy few weeks in politics. What is happening with our government? Are Dubliners going to be waking up next week to stay at home, don't visit your friends or your family? Or Vanessa, what do you think is going to happen? We're seeing that Dublin is the naughty county. And in particular, we're now seeing stats conveniently that show it by district. That show Dublin Southeast, and is it Dublin Northwest? I'm not sure. But Dublin Southeast is one of the naughtiest, as in the highest rate of infections in Dublin per 100,000. Vanessa, what's your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts. Well, I think we need to stop saying Dublin South, Dublin West, Dublin this or naughty or the bold. Like, do you know what I mean? The way Dublin is you don't know who you're bumping into any moment, or any once you go out, you don't know who you're bumping into or whose company you're in. I think I don't think they will lock down Dublin again, because I mean we went into lockdown in mid-March. But even then, even though we were all behind closed doors and you were afraid to go out, you wouldn't even meet me at the end of your driveway.
No, there's not many people who would now, to be fair to
him. You know, like it was kind of half-arsed anyway, with the airport still open and the coming and going, and you know, lockdown was a waste of time. It really was. We should have, like it. It's creeping up now. I suppose kids are at school, and they're pointing at certain events that, you know, like protests and the kids going back to school, and you know, house parties being the problem. People literally, once they started this phase return, people stopped following lockdown. They stopped. They just threw their lot at it. They were hanging out with each other. Like I don't see people as diligently rubbing their hands on sanitizers that go in anywhere. You go into a shop, they have masks. Some people do, some people don't. Do you know? I just don't think people give a shit now. I really don't.
I kind of do agree with you. You know, having spent most of the summer in Spain, where rules are very strict. You know, while I was over there, they made it law that you had to wear face coverings, you had to wear masks out in public on the street, or you'd be fined. And whatever about the strictness of the rules, we know the rates in Spain are quite high in certain regions. But whatever about the rules, people were abundantly clear on what they were. You wore a mask at all times. It must cover your nose and your mouth. If you didn't, you were fined. If you went to the supermarket or any shop, there was usually a person at the door to make sure A, you had your mask on, and B, you squirted hand sanitizer on your hands before you walked in the door. So having been used to that over the summer, when I got back, when I first got back and was making a trip to the supermarket, I was amazed to see that there was nobody using hand sanitizer going into the shop. Granted, most people were wearing masks, but there didn't seem to be anyone challenging anyone who didn't either. There was kind of a let them be, whereas in Spain I'd witnessed people being challenged. Now, whether that's right or wrong is a different story, but it just shows that there seemed to be a greater level of care and consideration to minimizing, you know, perception-wise the risk of exposure. So it does seem to be that people are very jaded here, and I guess ambiguity around the rules, you know, the bumbling of this new phase, if we want to call it that, or this new wave of the virus here in Ireland, has certainly strained public opinion. And you know, we throw Golfgate on top of that, and two board Fáilte members, you know, taking holidays in the sun. It's quite concerning, because you know, as the figures are increasing, it's going to be very hard, I think, to get people to support. Like, because if you think of our mindset back in March when we locked down, I mean, you're blaming COVID for me not wanting to meet you at the end of the garden. Fair enough.
But this wasn't March, so everyone was being very careful. And I do you know what? Even before the full lockdown, you know, sort of at the weekend before Paddy's Day, you know, where things, it was sort of, that was the week it all kind of established itself as a lockdown. The weeks before that, people were more careful, I thought. It's
Yeah,
February. There wasn't a car on the road here in February.
well, that's it. I mean, there was a real fear, and we were in it together, kind of thing. But
Mm.
that has become almost a joke, a satirical joke. We're in it together at this point. And the one thing that didn't go away in the discussions over the summer was the pubs. The pubs felt like everything had to happen around the pubs, and it's just an interesting perspective. Certainly, other industries have been left by the wayside. Obviously there's a lot of people employed by the pubs and the bars, but there's so much focus on the pub and the bars. It feels like other industries have been dropped by the wayside because it's not getting coverage in the media, and obviously schools are a priority as well. So it's just very interesting seeing how it's unfolded here versus how it's unfolded in other parts of Europe, and of course the travel thing, which I'm always harping on around as well. Derek, as an Irishman abroad, as they say, how's your perspective? What are you seeing? And you obviously are in a whole different world of chaos there in the US, but what are you taking from it?
Well, we started off fantastic. We had shelter in place before you guys at home, and that's one of the reasons why we spoke initially on the panel show on Broadsheet and Telly, and California had done well, so in comparison to the other states, and then as we opened up, an explosion happened, and California then quickly got a huge number of cases, and then so things were tightened down again. We do have outdoor dining, all that. I mentioned that, that's still possible. And in many ways, a lot of the character of the towns here has changed for the better, because al fresco dining wasn't a thing here, even though the weather is good. Like you have in Europe, the cafe culture in France or Spain or Portugal, where a lot of eating is outside. That wasn't the case here. Everything was inside. And so now restaurants they've got rid of car parking spaces, and they have put up nice areas where people can dine outside. It's after adding to the atmosphere of the local towns near us, Los Gatos and Campbell, Saratoga. It's created a nice atmosphere. I'm going to say something really obvious now, right? We could have a party with 1,000 people now, and if nobody has COVID at the party, at the end of the party, nobody's going to have COVID. The danger is that we could have 100 people at a party, and one person could have COVID, and at the end of the party, God knows how many people have COVID. And that's the really dangerous and dodgy thing about this virus. It's the people who aren't showing symptoms, the asymptomatic people who think they're fit and healthy, but who are actually actively spreading it. And that is the biggest issue. Like if 1,000 people don't have it, we're not going to catch it. I can't catch it off somebody who doesn't have it, obviously. We have been socializing. There's a small group of people we've been socializing with, just in houses. Some people we meet for play dates in the park. That people aren't comfortable going into the houses. But there's about 4 families who have met up, somewhat regularly, in people's houses. We've met a couple of people downtown in restaurants, dining, stuff like that. Mask wearing is still very, very, very good here where we live in Santa Clara County. It's I'd say 99%. You rarely see somebody without a mask. Social distancing is very, very good. People tend to stick to their own groups. There's a little park across the way from us, and you see different groups of teenagers, high school students setting up volleyball matches. But it seems to be they're all in their own little groups. So people have definitely done that well. I think the government of California has got their act into gear in terms of having the system in place. I think that a little bit the opposite from home, where there is clear message and a clear guideline as to what should happen. So there's 4 different stages: red, purple, orange, and yellow. I think are the colors. I can check that. But red is the really dangerous stage. Purple is better. Yellow is much better, and then green is fully back. We've just gone from the purple stage back to the red stage. What does that mean? Purple stage, schools are not allowed open. If a county has been in the red stage, schools not allowed open. The purple stage, if a county has been in the purple area for 14 days, then the school can start to reopen. But the school reopen will be staggered. So even though the school, if by the end of the 14 days we're still in the good zone, or we've improved even, our daughter's school can reopen. But they won't reopen with everybody. They will reopen with younger classes first, and then it'll be 2 days a week in school, 2 days a week distance learning. And it's only as we move through the stages that they will gradually increase that to more in-person learning. But it's very clearly laid out. You can see what the guidelines are, and there's a good plan in place. But that everything looks good in paper.
But you do have certainly what I think we've lost Vanessa. She forgot to put coins in the meter. But another thing that's come around, because friends of mine in the US are talking about getting into pods with other people, it's access to testing. These drive-through or drive-up or whatever you want to call them, testing centers. One friend said they had their test result back in 24 hours. So it seems to be testing on demand. What's interesting in Ireland this week is the government is now saying, or the HSE is now saying, that there's a huge rise in people requesting tests through GP referrals. So you still need to go to your GP for a test here. Now, I know that there's no cost associated with that, but it's putting a barrier between people getting access to tests and otherwise. And then turnaround time on tests is a lot longer than the US. But what was covered in the papers this week was the fact that they've now reassigned resources of testing from the meat factories, which are a huge area of concern, to cope with the public demand for testing, which to me is highlighting that testing capacity doesn't appear to have been increased to the levels they claimed it would be a few months ago. And certainly one of the consistent messages from the start of the pandemic is that testing is a key part of managing it. Is that still the case in the US? Are you seeing, if you wanted to go to a test center, now, could you do that without any cost or without any, need for a GP?
I don't know. There is testing centers. I'm not sure about the cost. I think there may be a cost to it. I'll check that for you. I'll put it into the comments when we're finished about what the cost is. I haven't needed a test yet. I don't know anybody who's needed a test yet. So, but there are centres available where we can drive up and get a test. So I'm just not familiar with how it works 100%.
But have you had friends who've gone to get tested, or off their own back? We must move in different circles, Derek. We must move in different circles. But sticking to the US, Derek, Trump is in the news again. There's a surprise, and this time it's for what he said behind closed doors in terms of suppressing the seriousness of coronavirus. How's that being received, particularly with the Republican supporters in the US, so close now to an election? How is that being received and reported?
Well, it's the usual over here. Normal people are going, this is shocking, that's unbelievable, this has to doom in, you can't survive this. And you turn on Fox News and it's like the president was trying to reassure the population. He's doing a great job, best job in the whole world, great man, lucky to have him. So the dial is not going to move, I don't think. But I tell you what I do think. I think this is his forte. Like, this is what he's got through his life doing, and it's bullshitting and deflecting. Pardon the language, but there's some horrible stories coming out about him in terms of the military, the Russian bounties. Russia seemingly putting bounties on soldiers in Afghanistan, and Trump is not done about that. And then last week it came out that he refused to go to the cemetery in Paris because it was wet, and he called the dead soldiers losers and suckers, and he didn't think seeing wounded soldiers marching in parades as being a good look. He thought he wouldn't have that when he was reviewing Bastille Day in Paris. He thought seeing wounded soldiers. So that was very damaging for somebody who would have a lot of support amongst military families, and for him to be coming out and saying these things, given his own record of daft dodging and saying Vietnam, getting through the 1970s without STI was his Vietnam. Yeah. So, but it really is like his base are just completely blind to anything that he can do.
Is it too soon?
35.
Sorry, Dirk.
35% of people are just solid behind him. Other Republicans will go with him because there's a very, very good chance the next president is going to get to name at least 2 Supreme Court judges. And for the Republicans, that had been massive. Like the Supreme Court has already turned conservative. If they could get 2 more young judges in, they would have a 7-2 majority, and that would shape the direction of America for the next 30 or 40 years. So I think there's a lot of Republicans who will hold their nose and go with him for that. But genuinely, there is 50 scandals that are impeachable, and that's why he should be forced to resign. And I think America is in a very, very dangerous place in terms of the whole idea of America, the American dream, the American ideals of constitutional democracy, constitutional republic, separation of powers, checks and balances, rule of law. Even in my few minutes talking here, I have mentioned that the Department of Justice have taken over a libel case. Trump, a lady accused Trump of raping her back in the 80s. She was looking for a DNA test and stuff like that. The court was going to ask Trump to provide the DNA test. But the Department of Justice has now stepped in and they've taken over the case. So now instead of her suing Trump for libel, she now has to sue the United States. So basically, sorry, I didn't explain that very well. The case was in the state courts. Bill Barr is the Attorney General. He's just doing everything for Trump, and he's moved the case. It was at the end of the road in the state courts. He's moved it to the federal courts, and instead of Donald Trump being the defendant, the United States is now the defendant. The Department of Justice is now taking on this case. It is absolutely, it smashes the Constitution, to my view, in terms of an independent judiciary or an independent justice, and nobody being above the law. And I genuinely fear for America, and if American Constitution is destroyed, I fear for the world, to be honest with you. That sounds like I'm overstated, that sounds dramatic, but I do think we're heading into a very, very dark period where the rise of totalitarianism it's over the horizon.
It's interesting, but welcome back, Vanessa. You put
sorry,
the
sincere apologies. First, I had no camera on the desktop, and then the Wi-Fi went. So as I was rebooting this, everything just literally went. So I'm here now, and I'm sorry, Neil, sorry, Derek, and sorry, viewers.
Nope.
I was starting to panic there for a bit because we have a big day tomorrow morning.
Well, it's good to have you back. We were getting worried there. We'd have to have Derek talk.
And I missed all the Trump talk. Isn't that terrible?
Speaking of things Trump and totalitarian, I wanted to get your view on our government, and very clearly public support for lockdowns are waning. But we've got a Taoiseach who seems to be 2 weeks behind everyone else. We've a Taoiseach who thinks he's the Taoiseach, and we have a health minister who thinks he's a doctor. What do you think's going on? And we have of course.
Well, there's obviously a communication problem between all of them. You know, between the three different parties in government, there's no one mutual voice on anything. That's probably why there's different rules and regulations per department. You know.
Can I ask you, Vanessa?
That could be that. But Micheál Martin was always a dither. He'd always be 24 hours behind anybody else making a statement on anything.
But do you think, Leo is playing a game here? Is he?
Oh yeah, he's played them all for suckers.
So what's going to happen? Are we going to see?
He's up 20 points. Fine Gael are coming up on 20 points, and Fianna Fáil are down. We did say at one show, did we, about the sort of the divide in Ireland, where it was like the two-party system in Ireland, where it was beginning to look like now that Sinn Féin was going to be the second party. And the polls are saying that. No, I don't believe the polls, but it's bloody obvious that this government is just not working. It doesn't even have a nickname yet. Do you know what I mean? Like the three of them in it together. They're not communicating. There's no one voice. And I did see that they were looking to bring back. It was actually Fianna Fáil were looking to bring back this marketing guru that they hired at the top of the pandemic. John Concannon Concannon. It's a mess, I think, and I think they put Fianna Fáil in particular put the wrong people into the wrong ministries. It's going to be. They were set up. Leo's been playing.
How long have they got? How long have they got?
If Micheál can get the budget 2021 over the line in the House, I'd say they'll get another 2 years. If he can't get budget over the line, that's the end of the road for Micheál.
What do you reckon, Derek?
I'm just interested. I'd say you guys are more on top of it than I am. But is Leo's tactics working? Is it like are Fine Gael looking confident? Is that what, like, are people harking back to Leo and Simon Harris?
No,
I saw somebody on Twitter saying that Simon Harris was like acting as like a de facto Minister for Health, that he was sounding more sensible or more on top of it than Donnelly.
No, I think it's because people got used to his voice every day over the last 2 to 3, 4 months. I don't think he's coming across as any worse or better at any stage than the way Donnelly is. Donnelly has come into this with no political pedigree, no political principles, no senior public service background, and he's gone into a monster at the biggest crisis it's ever had in health. And he's brought in all the bullshit bingo that the PMs in McKinsey and the management consultants in McKinsey's have drilled into them in their 15-hour days, 7 days a week. And that's what he's bringing in. So he's repeating the consultants report. And he's not blending into the message. He's reading what he's given, he's memorizing it, and he's regurgitating it. And when you're reading or researching a subject, as the history teacher and you're writing your thesis, you read all sorts and you come out with a blend. Everything he has is completely segmented, and maybe he's not long enough in the job, but it's very clear that he hasn't got the wider grip of his brief or even of the management of the pandemic. I don't think the HSE are helping him either. I don't think John Reid is helping him. But he's proved that he has. I think it goes back to his political pedigree as well, because he has no principle at all. He's gone from an independent to social democrat to actually helping found the Social Democrats.
Yeah.
And then doing a runner into Fianna Fáil. I mean, you can't get anything more opposite than that.
I was just I was sort of basing my comment on your observation about the rise in the polls and just sort of the general sort of positive comments that was directed towards Fine Gael. I'm wondering if there was an election tomorrow, like what would you call it?
Fine Gael.
Like,
Fine Gael for sure. No question. Fine Gael would wipe the floor with them.
Based on what? Like on if.
Well, the game I saw Leo play was he suddenly became the intervention for pubs, and that was kind of the telltale for me. It wasn't the breaking rank from government.
It was populism.
Yeah, he went straight for the pubs and came up with a plan to reopen them. And let's be honest, the plan is no different than the pubs that are already open that serve food. And he's the one that's been going on about we need to get travel restarted and we need to do X, Y, and Z for businesses. All of a sudden, the things he wasn't saying only a month prior or 2 months prior, he's now singing from the rooftops, and he's the only one doing it. So it feels very much a politically strategic move that he's made. But it's populism, as Vanessa said. The focus over the whole summer has been the bloody pubs, and
it's Leo driven then, is it? It's Leo driven as opposed to.
No, I think it's strategic. I think Leo's been playing a blinder here, and he's been doing it from the start because I'm sure I've said it, and I'm sure he laughed at me for saying this. See, I think they knew this was coming down the tracks in January, and that's when, because Leo raced into an election, hadn't even told most of his own party. In fact, they hadn't even, some of their constituencies hadn't even their nomination conventions yet. And their first week of the 3-week campaign was a howler. It was the worst start to any election campaign ever. And I firmly believe...
if I could just back up what you're saying, I think to prove what Trump has come out with this week and how much he knew in February is like, and how aware he was, how dangerous it is, I think gives credence to what you're saying. I think a lot of the leaders knew what was coming.
You see,
Trump knew what was coming.
I have felt that since the off, definitely no later than the end of February, early March, because I was quite active in this campaign this time round, in this general election this time round. And I felt that as this started to get more and more out of control and ridiculous. And you've now got to a stage where in January or in June, if all what they were saying and all their plans were actually true, they actually would have opened up in June to give everyone a chance to develop for the herd immunity to develop while the days were longer before the schools came back. If there was any real will to manage the country during a pandemic, they'd have figured out a way to run the leaving cert, to get the 6 years back to school. Because they second half of March, all of April and all of May, to reconfigure classrooms, to reconfigure exam halls. That could have been done. There's no problem shipping out exam papers in the boxes. Everyone was getting more posts than they ever did over March, April, May, and June. So the whole thing was just a load of crap. The ongoing changes, the ongoing plans, the ongoing updates, the news conferences every day, even the numbers it was just all boom, throwing it out there, keeping you away from us. Oh yeah, great new viral video, kids dancing on TikTok. Oh, they're playing bingo down the flats. And we got caught up in that for 3 months. If they were really, if the facts that they were telling us were sincere, they would have opened up in June, most. Now, Leo's now rowing in behind the pubs. The one thing people watch at the budget is what?
Price of drink and the price of gas.
The old reliables. I promise you. There's something happening here. There's something big happening.
An interesting question to ask. Like, what did they know and when did they know it? The whole question.
I found out my friend, a very, very good friend, had an overdose. She got the COVID pneumonia and she wasn't intubated, but she was in ICU, and she had, now this woman is actually a scientist. She has been told categorically that there was an identical case to hers of COVID pneumonia in the regional hospital in late October, early November. And we have been told in the credit union that there was a very strong possibility of a cluster in November. And you said you were very ill at Christmas.
Yes, I did, yeah. I missed New Year's Eve celebration at home in Ireland.
I've been living on the theory that we all have it. We've all had it.
But the only thing with that theory, though, is that we don't know yet if having it previously means you've got a level of immunity beyond a couple of months. So
at this stage, no, I don't give a shit, lads. I'd have killed it myself.
If
I'd got my hands on it, I'd have killed it, and I'd just saved the world. I'd have saved you all. Superhero.
There's also worrying things about the effects it has, the after effects, and how long it takes people to recover, and what it does to people's, like, say, ability to exercise and stuff like that. And seemingly it hurts. There's heart damage. There's a whole lot of other side effects to this thing that we're not aware of yet, or we're just still learning about.
But is that not, and now this is an armchair layperson question, but is that not common with viruses like pneumonia and severe flu, that it can leave an impact, or is this unique to coronavirus?
I think it's the length of time it's lasting. I think it's just people who are have it 3-6 months later, they're still find it difficult to walk upstairs, or they can't lift weights that they were lifting, or they can't exercise at the level they were exercising at.
It's still early days. To be fair, though, it is still early days, and it makes a great headline when you not to take away from anyone who's suffering like that, but it does make a great headline. We're very much still in that zone of doom and gloom and fear mongering amongst the media. So I think there's a lot of speculation around that. And anecdotally, I know of one friend of mine. She's in her 20s, and she had it in Italy. She's in Lombardy, or near Lombardy, and she was out of action for 2 months. She said it was one of the worst illnesses she's ever had. She's fine now. But flip side of that, I know people in the US who had it, who it was just a bad flu, and a couple of weeks and they were back on their feet. So I think it's still early days with that. But it also highlights our need to be pretty focused and clear on how we manage things going forward. We're in a state now where, for a variety of reasons, the death rate isn't rising in line with the rate of infections that are rising. Now that's happening in Ireland. In other countries like Spain, for example, the death rate now has finally started to increase after a period where it was flat, even though the infection rates had dramatically increased. We know it's in the younger generations now, and now the HSE is saying, or NFED are saying, it's starting to creep into the older demographics. So, but it's the managing it going forward. We're hitting the autumn, the winter time. The kids going back to school, and I do want to ask you, Derek, about the kids going back to school. The dark evenings. If Dubliners are told, don't be going over to your friends and family now, no house visits. We can't socialize outside in the wintertime. We can't meet people in their gardens. It's too fucking cold. It's raining. It's too dark, and it's going to kill any
outdoor heaters.
Outdoor
heaters are the new hand sanitizer, the new toilet paper.
Did John Gormley not ban them years ago? Did he stop?
Oh, sure,
Did John Gormley ban those outside heaters?
Well, if he hasn't, Eamon Ryan will definitely do it. That's for sure. You'll only be allowed if you want it. That'll be it. The Greens will say if you want to visit.
Parties in the cycle lanes.
Well, that's it. The Greens will say if you do want to visit a friend's house, you have to go on your bicycle, otherwise you're not allowed. That's what's going to happen. But getting back to sorry, Derek, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to ask you just your experience in Spain. And you were telling us when you were there how good it was, and you mentioned how strict it was in terms of fines and stuff like that. And even with the fines that were being imposed, Spain has now had an outbreak again. Can you just enlighten us as to why that has happened? Why is there an outbreak in Spain?
So first of all, we need to bear in mind, Ireland and Spain, we can't compare side by side. Spain has a population of 51 million people, and it's 4 times the size of Ireland, if not bigger. The big one was Catalonia. That's where the massive explosion of cases first happened. And part of the driver for that was political, because during the pandemic, so the way Spain is broken up is you have a prime minister, and then all of the regions have what they have a president, and that president has certain powers. So my region is the Valencia region, population of 5 million, and it has a president, and that's where all the Costa Blanca, which a lot of Irish holidaymakers, the Alicante region, a lot of holidaymakers go there. So Catalonia exploded, and one of the big issues that the local governments, the presidents had during the lockdown was it was too severe, give the power back to the local regions. As soon as the Prime Minister of Spain did that, that's when cases started to go up again, when they came out of that. It felt like, certainly from what I was reading in the Spanish news, it felt like the Catalonian government, giving a pure two fingers to Madrid, just dragged their feet with putting the protocols in place to manage things, and cases skyrocketed there. But then we saw Madrid, there was the north of Spain as well, that then started to see cases. Madrid is the big hotspot at the moment. But further south then, the Murcia region, which they started to spike in cases. In fact, they were one of the first, outside of Catalonia, they were one of the first regions that locked down a town. So that's why I'm interested in what's going to happen with Dublin next week. If certain regions are suffering hard and others, are they going to lock down those towns? Murcia went straight in and locked down a town. So there's that. But when they broke it down, because this one thing the Spanish do is you don't mess with the Spanish police. So if they saw you walking down the street, no mask on, they're not going to ask you, where's your mask? They're not going to do the reinforce, educate, and then warn. Straight in, writing you a ticket for 100. The Spanish government made millions during the whole lockdown. So
did they get any money off you, Neil?
Are you joking me? I wore 2 masks in case one fell off. But even like, the discipline was there with certainly in the Valencia region. So Valencia region, and I do want to get to, because there's a very important comparison education wise with Valencia and Ireland. I'll get to that in a second. But they're still, from a European perspective, they're still trying to understand what happened in Spain. Why did Spanish cases dramatically increase the way they did? What's happened? Spain had one of the strictest lockdowns, and they could still have some of the strictest measures. You might remember the show when we were in that bar with Hazel and Rory from Paddy's Point, and they were talking about the measures in place. So since then, the Spanish government has, and the regional presidents have introduced new rules. So they have closed what they consider wet pubs. They closed them originally for 2 weeks, and they extended it further 3 weeks. But the definition of wet pubs is a lot smaller than what we would call wet pubs. Certainly in my area, there was only one pub that had to close because most pubs serve food. Karaoke bars were closed down. But they introduced a closing time. The closing time of 1 a.m. because they discovered that nightclubs, so Spain allowed nightclubs to reopen, but you couldn't dance. You can work out what happened there. Family gatherings, house gatherings, that's where all the outbreaks were really happening. Travel accounted for only 2% of cases, and that's a similar statistic across Europe. But the difference between there and here is in Ireland, if the guards were going in to inspect premises, I know at one point I heard there was going to be there was heads up given in the media that the guards are going to be out this weekend. It was a regular thing every week where the guards would raid premises or visit premises, and they would sometimes visit the same premises twice in one night just to test. They just, that they get away with it once. So places where police had the power to close down establishments, but then because of the nightclubs are flouting rules and all that, the nightclubs have never been allowed open. That's why the Spanish government then decided to introduce these additional measures, and they're going to be in place for another few weeks. So it is still somewhat a bit of a mystery, and there is an argument to say, well, everyone wore masks in Spain, it didn't really make much difference, so then what's the point? There is that argument. If John was here now, he'd have a field day with that. But
well, I'm with them. I'm with them now on the masks. I have to say so. I have to admit that. I don't think there's a need for masks.
We've discussed it, and we could argue about it. So we'll park it for now. But
I tell you, the fucking COVID face is the new COVID air.
COVID faces.
Yeah, because you're all sweaty and spotty. You're sending teenagers into school in a mask for the whole day.
Well, go and get a different mask. I got picked up some great masks in Spain that are very thin, and you could clean your.
I know. I mean, we've figured out a workaround with swaps and chairs and stuff like that. Look, I'm pretty much there now on the masks. I have to admit that.
You see, it all happens here in Broadsheet on the Telly.
I wear one because Actually someone on Broadsheet gave during the week gave a great sort of reasoning for it. It's a bit like farting in a room, you know. You leave the room. It's that kind of social behavior. I'm wearing a mask because it's the mannerly, decent thing to do. I'm being asked to do it. It's like going into a Chinese person's house and you leave your shoes outside, or they ask you to move your shoes. And somebody used the sort of the example of farting in a room. If you're getting ready to let one off, you will leave the room. Whereas not wearing a mask in a shop and carrying on like that, it's that kind of behavior. You have that much disdain for the people that you're kind of in company with. And I thought it was a very good example. I thought it was a very good use of it, of such a thing, the way it was done. And I telling you guys, I think this is all going to just wither away, and they're just trying to figure out now. The next thing now will be, how are we going to pay for all this? How are we going to get the tourists back?
Getting back to the budget, I'd say we're going to see a corona levy. You can hear it here first. Similar to the pension levy and all that, we're going to have a corona levy in the tax this year. Be it something that's added to as a percentage on VAT or something, or it's directly hitting income tax. We're definitely going to see a corona levy.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, I would object to paying that because of the sheer mismanagement.
You won't have any choice though, Vanessa. You're a celebrity accountant. You should know better than that.
No, but I'll have something to say about it. You can be sure of it, lads.
The only issue is that something that can be counterproductive as well, because that's what's going to take more money out of the economy. And
I don't care. Yeah. The sheer mismanagement of it. They threw money at everything for nothing. Going off, hiring planes to go off to China to bring back PPE, and planes were empty and PPE was not good for nothing. Renting rooms, bedrooms, private bedrooms in hospitals, but not arranging consultants to service them or staff to service them. Block booking the entire City West Hotel. So that's still out there.
I think Michael McDougall had a.
And that's not putting a cost on the losses of not kind of maintaining screening programs, or they're starting to release now, but that whole bottleneck, the way they shut all that down, all the other waiting lists, that's just been that list has been concertining away in the background. Nobody's put a price on that, to make up that shortfall. The loss of VAT receipts in the period in the middle quarter of the year, and the loss of just general GDP, just general income throughout the summer season from losses of events, festivals, the hurling, the whole lot. I mean, there's just this great big gaping hole that they caused and threw more money in. There's no way. There's absolutely no way I would sit back and allow people be forced to pay a COVID levy based on what I've seen it happen here in March, April, May, June, July. And do you know what? It's worse they're getting. They're not getting any better at it. They're not getting any better at managing this pandemic or getting us back out of it. There has never been an exit strategy from day one. Never.
Well, I completely agree with that.
Like I could go along with it. So it could take 8 to 12 weeks to get ourselves sorted, get ready for the surge, get the kids back to school, figure out a way of managing public transport, figure out a way of managing the arrivals hall in Dublin Airport. I could figure out all that. 12 weeks should have been enough to figure all that out. And there's Sister Norma there wandering around the department out there. She doesn't know what she's doing.
Let's talk about.
That's why.
Sorry, Derek.
I think that's why people thought when we started in March, we can do this for a short period of time. Let's do this for 12 weeks. Let's get it right. That you mentioned that a moment ago, that there was that willingness. We're in this together. Flatten the curve was the message. That was the clear message, that simple message everybody could buy into. And I think we did. But sorry, Derek, we were buying into it before,
by the end of February, people were in lockdown themselves because there was people were shouting at them to stop the Patrick's Day parade.
Yeah.
People had murder over Cheltenham. Like that was us on our own doing this.
But we also
I'm using the royal we now, but like people could not understand why a resort in Italy where there was a large Irish population in for the holidays on midterm breaks, you know, the school's out. That week is just, it's a crush week, right? Why they were not stopped at Dublin Airport or Cork Airport or Shannon and isolated there and there. If it was the Department of Ag and they thought there was a suspected case of rabies coming in, they'd have been there suited and booted at every port of entry in the country.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you know,
and yet a GP came back with the virus, rang, and he was told, "Oh, you're grand, stay at work," and he sent his children into school.
And you know, we know more now than we did then.
But we don't know anymore now, Neil, because
but
we still don't know what we're doing.
But no, they don't. But we know more about the virus and
Well, in other words, lads, I'm telling you, I'll be marching on the street with Brendan Ogle if you try and stitch a COVID, Levy.
There you go. We'll see. We'll hold you to that.
Give me back my motor tax. Give me back the motor tax I paid in March and I wasn't able to drive until July.
Moving back to education, Derek, and because Vanessa mentioned Norma, and I did mention Valencia as a comparison, because Valencia is a population, is a region of 5 million people. So school, you remember we back when I was in Spain and Hazel and Rory from the bar who we had on, their daughter had done the Spanish equivalent of Leaving Cert. It was delayed a couple of weeks. Results turned around in 5 days. Socially distant, yada yada yada. So schools went back in Spain last week, and the Valencia region hired an additional 4,300 teachers to accommodate reduction of class sizes and to ensure social distancing in the school. Now, obviously, you know, I'm sure many of those teachers came from outside of that region. You made a point on Twitter when I tweeted that about, you know, there was talk of it happening in Ireland for 1,000 teachers. Did we see those 1,000 teachers get hired? You know, clearly, you know, at the time it wasn't enough because it's less than a teacher at school. How you still feel about that?
It's one teacher for every 4 schools. There's over 4,000. There's over 4,000. Like, and 1,000 extra teachers sounds fantastic. It makes a great headline for the Irish Independent to throw up 1,000 extra teachers. Something's been done. That's fantastic. There's 4,000 something schools. I think 4,300 schools, something like that. It's definitely over 4,000 between primary and second level. So that's one teacher for every 4 schools. And then some schools might need to get 2 teachers or whatever. The way it works, you know. So that's a mess. And then that's a figure that probably an aspirational figure that they put out there. I haven't seen any figures for how much that 1,000 they've actually hired. I've been interested. I've been trying to contact people at home, former colleagues, family members, friends who are in different schools. So I know a lot of people from a lot of different schools. I know a lot of family members who have sons and daughters going back to school and stuff like that. Definitely, almost to a man, right? Everybody wanted to go back. Man and woman, teachers wanted to go back, students wanted to go back, parents wanted to get their kids back. Completely understandable, right? But it seemed to me that the plan in place to get things back was very, very, very sketchy, very non-existent. They were talking about things like having pods and bubbles, right? Now, my understanding of a pod here is that Leah my daughter can go and meet her friend, right? And so because it's distance learning at the moment, they go into a breakout room, and that's their little pod. There's a group of 3 of them in a little pod. The parents have sort of got together and said, well, we'll have it in each of our houses. We'll have our own little pod, so the girls can come and they can do their online stuff, and then they can have break time together and stuff like that. So that's like my understanding of a pod here. in Ireland, what seems to have happened is a pod is simply the way the tables are arranged in the classroom, and a bubble is the class. So again, there's a sort of a spin that says, "Oh, schools have pods and bubbles," and that gives a sense of reassurance. But people on the ground, and if you just look at, there's a good edchat.ie on Twitter, a lot of them have been saying, like, look, that's just tables. A pod is tables. We've put them in groups of 4, called it a pod, and the class is the bubble. And a lot of schools there's social distance is very, very difficult. Narrow corridors, small classrooms, packed classes, and I was surprised, I suppose, at how willing my own family members and people I know well were, how unquestioning they were about sending the kids back. I know everybody wants to get back to normal, but just to give you a comparison, over here, the district, which is like, I suppose, for want of a better word, a county. So there's 8 primary schools in the district. They gave the option of a virtual school. So if you were worried, or if you wanted certainty for the year, the district set up a virtual school where students from all the 8 schools could decide to go full-time online for the year. So to have that certainty, if that's what the parents wanted, and that's what they felt safer doing. Out of the 8 schools, about 1,000 students, these are all elementary schools, about 1,000 students from the 8 different schools have joined this virtual school. We decided against that. We decided to stay with our own school, because we wanted to keep Leah within the school. We loved the school she's in, and we wanted to keep her with our friends and stuff like that. So our scenario now with the school is we're in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. We've just after coming out of phase 1. So phase 1 was completely distance learning. Phase 2 now, if we stay in phase 2 for 14 days, the school can then start to bring people back. At the moment, the school is open to have a waiver for special cases, children with special needs that actually need in-person instruction. The teacher is still doing it online, but they have supervisors in the school with the child to get them to do the instruction. So in 2 weeks' time, the school could be back open. But what will happen is it's very clear, it's on a phase basis, younger classes first, then it will be 2 days per week, so that you have a cohort of A and B. So each class is divided into 2. Cohort A will go 2 days, cohort B will go 2 days, and Wednesday is a short day, and that's a distance learning day. And then when you go to phase 3, it gradually increases. Then phase 4 is going to be fully opened. So, to me, it's a very, very logical, thought out, structured plan, and that seems to be hugely missing from the Irish situation, which it seems to be that it's lots of buzzwords, pods, bubbles, right? A bit of hand sanitizer, a few masks. And then it's up to sort of each school as itself to manage as they go. And I there's also this concern that people are going to be informed if there's a breakout if there's a case in the school, which I think it seems a bit ludicrous if people aren't informed. Surely if there's a case in the school, everybody should be informed. So that's just my observation from afar, that like I've been impressed by the work done here to put a plan in place. The plan mightn't work, right? It might go pear-shaped, right? It might talk in 2 months' time and say, Derek, I thought I had a great plan. But from this position, it looks clear. It looks like they have something set in stone. I don't see that from home, at home. And, I try to follow this close as I can. I try to talk to as much people as I can. I'm hearing there's schools with very little social distancing taking place. Pretty much, schools running as normal, with maybe the exception of hand sanitizer and a mask. But that's only from a long distance away, I suppose.
Do you know what? That's people are just they've given it their best. And if it's coming for them now, that's the way. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think it's worth as well noting, I put this in the paper today, Derek, that of all of the cases that have turned up in schools in Ireland, they haven't resulted in outbreaks by our definition of an outbreak. So obviously that isn't going to be a sustainable figure, but so far so good, touch wood.
But we're really happy The Rock and his family are all safe and well.
The what?
Does he live near you?
Who's that? What?
The Rock. They all had it in his gaff.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't.
He didn't lose any of his muscle mass, Derek, or Vanessa. He's still he's still got.
Well, I offered to come out and help
do his accountants.
give him a wipe.
Balance his books.
Balance his boobs.
But we might check in again on that next week as well, Derek. Just see how education's progressing. Given we can look at the American model, the Irish model, and the Spanish model, and see how things are progressing and how Ireland compares. Because regardless of the bumbling, there is a degree of bumbling that happened in every country. Spain, certainly the Spanish education minister equivalents did get a hard time over what they deemed to be very slow progress on announcing changes, despite how well they handled the equivalent of their leaving cert. So not to give any credit to the Irish government for the handling, because best of a bad bunch is still a bad bunch. Time will tell.
Well, I tell you guys, I reckon when they were touting for who was going to take over for Phil, I remember Regina. I thought Regina might get the nod, and then I was kind of pretty much saying, I tell you, if she gets that job, I'm joining Finn again.
On that, Vanessa, if I could ask you one last serious question about it, because Ursula threw I'm going to say a spanner in the works for the boys' club in politics, and said she wanted a male and a female candidate.
I just think that was tokenism, to be honest.
But it clearly looked like at one point there was going to be no female candidate put forward. How did you feel about
the short list I would have put together would have had more women than men, to be honest. I didn't see, there was no male front runner for me.
I don't think there was really any front runners, that.
I know Mairead McGuinness was definitely a front runner, but I know she was the strongest candidate, and anyone who says she wasn't is talking.
She has the qualifications.
There's no doubt, and she has performed very well.
She's very well respected out there.
Mainly probably for herself. That's fair enough, but you actually heard her speak out there, whereas you can point at 90% of the others out there, and you haven't heard them speak out there. Do you know what I mean? You might hear Ming and Mick Wallace and Claire Daly speaking every now and again, but that's on their own podcasts and web channels. Look at she has been a very good performer, and I think she deserved the job. But I did had a sneaking suspicion they might squeeze Regina in. And so she was my outside bet. I was putting a tenner on her, and then I kind of had to admit, if she got the job, I tell you, I was Johnny for the game. Fuck is like, Jesus, that's the kind of gig the likes of her could get. What were you going to ask me? Was it about the appointment of her age?
I was just, I wanted to see how you felt about the fact that clearly, for a period of a couple of days.
I don't think Phil should have stepped down, to be honest. I think he.
I do think I think it's a massive blow for Ireland's representation.
Do you?
Okay, let me go back there 1 second, because I just wanted to say before that. I thought it was up to Ireland to nominate a commissioner. I didn't like the idea that this president of one of the 5 European Union presidents was telling us to nominate 2 people. I thought it was our prerogative to nominate who we wanted as a commissioner.
Well, yeah, we nominated them, but we all have a commissioner each. Pretty much.
Yeah, but so what I'm saying is, what business was it of her to tell us to nominate 2? She doesn't get to choose. Like, she shouldn't. We in normal circumstances, the government nominates the person they want for the commission, right? But I know it's an unusual circumstance that someone steps down, but I didn't like this idea that she had the power to tell us Like she was going to pick our commissioner. Now I know the commissioners have to
I'm
go
not
through
sure
an
she
approval
had the
process.
power. I'm not sure she had the power. I think she was
So-
probably just
So
making
was
the
it
most of it.
just show voting then, just tokenism, as Neil said earlier on?
Well, I think it's fair because
I think it was tokenism, but I think well now Phil went back to Phil just returned to his normal self when he was saying, no, sure, I was grand. Sure, I was only stopped by the guard. Oh, sure, yeah, it was only a game of golf. Sure. The way he blackguarded his way from one day to the next is what tripped Phil up. It wasn't that he had come in and he got all around the country and was acting the bollocks, right? There's two things about this whole thing with Phil Hogan for me, right? One is if he'd just come in and when he was there playing golf, I mean, people have known he was never off a golf course. You know, he that's what he does, right? He's a whiner and dine. He whines and dines for Ireland.
Can I ask this question? Can you point out to me one achievement of Phil Hogan's career that isn't personal to him in terms of him getting the ministry and him getting the position?
Getting elected.
Where
he's got a very interesting career, though.
From whining, is it from whining and dining and playing golf?
He does. He takes the fight to people. He takes the fight to people, and he doesn't have like the great arguments, but he does come across as winning the argument, whether he actually does or not. He does come across that way, and he carries himself as if he's winning the argument and his case is right, regardless. So he makes decisions based on that. That's what he's done all his life.
The only thing that springs to my mind when I think of Phil Hogan is him being in Enda Kenny's ear, Enda Kenny having an earpiece during a debate, and Phil was supposed to be the wise guy coaching Kenny during the debate. Remember that? And
in actual fact, when Enda ran originally for leader of Fine Gael after Michael Noonan stepped down, Phil Hogan was the contender against him. And then when Enda Kenny was elected, and then there was a bit of when Richard Bruton tried it on with them against Enda Kenny, it was Phil that was standing in front of Enda Kenny. So but you see, that's how they get their asses covered and they get these jobs. Like, seriously, this is how the game is played.
But Derek, he did prove himself in Europe.
But this is the thing. Derek, if you want to listen, what he does is he just takes a position, and as far as he's concerned, that's right. No matter how brilliant the other side's arguments are, or how solid their facts are that he's wrong, he will conduct himself and go about his day to day as if he's just right. He's big and bold enough. Are you going to tell me I'm wrong? Are you going to try and tell me I can't do this? I have seen him face to face with Pascal Donoghue at an event, right? Yards away from me. And he just ripped the piss out of Pascal because Pascal was on a hiding to nothing now with the credit union crowd. And you had the regulator there and a handful of lads with Central Bank and another handful of people from the Department of Finance. So they knew not to get on mine and a few others' nerves. And Phil was playing to the crowd. Like. He was getting the slaps on the back, but he is a credit union man anyway. But he played to the crowd. Pascal Donoghue has never kind of gotten over that, or has he forgiven us for him making such a fool of himself? He does actually go on like he's always right, no matter what. And he makes his decisions. Like he got stopped by a guard for being on the phone. But it's as far as he's concerned, the likes of Phil Hogan, as far as he's concerned, I've every right to be on my phone. I'm a busy man. I'm working and I'm talking. I'm a commissioner. I'm right. I don't care if it's against the law. I'm right and you're wrong. That's bullheaded.
That's the P. Flynn attitude. Do you know what I mean? That's what done in P. Flynn.
The other thing about Phil, though, I would say is if he had, when he was pulled up on this originally, when Golfgate broke, right? If he'd have just said, Jesus, lads, I was in Belgium yesterday, I was in London, I was in Dublin, I had to go down to Kildare, I had to call and see the brother in Kilkenny, I promised the lads in Limerick I had to go, I lost all track of where I was, I know I did wrong. I hope I didn't put anyone at harm. If he just said all that and said, Jesus, I was confused, I was exhausted, he would have been, she's the poor fella, listen, leave him, you know. And that's what would have happened.
What does that say to you about him, though? What does that say to you about him? It's a complete lack of judgment.
No, but he resorted to Nora. They knew he would get his back up and he'd fight his way around it. Phil was set up.
But just two things on that.
People.
Two things on that, Vanessa or Derek. So just your question about what he's done. Like he negotiated a number of trade agreements in his role as commissioner, and notably with South America with agriculture, which was deemed a very challenging one, and so on. So he was very well respected in that regard. But I'm going to make a comment on the mobile phone thing, and I'm not in any way justifying or praising the guy for doing it. But we're somewhat hypocritical with this, because there's a lot of Irish people go to the pub with their friends, and if they were to say, "Oh, the guards pulled me over, they caught me on the phone, but I talked my way out of it," they'd be like, "Oh, you're great, you got away with it." But as soon as it's somebody in the public eye, it's like there's a hypocritical view we give of that. Personally, I think it's a massive, massive blow to Ireland that at a time when Brexit is just about to reach its critical mass, we lose, not just a strong negotiator in that sphere, but we lose somebody who's wearing the green jersey, as you'd often say, Vanessa. So regardless of whether you like him in real life or not, regardless of whether, he gave his two fingers to the establishment and playing around golf and heading off to the K Club and doing all his bits, we have lost
his messages.
Yeah. I'm not aware of his achievements. I'm not as aware of his achievements as a negotiator.
I'm just about to say.
I think if Vanessa's right in judging his personality, he seems to be more like a bully, and
they used it against him.
Skill. Like who is the best negotiator, the best Irish negotiator, like him or loathe him, over the last 30 years or the last 40 years?
Joe Riley.
Charlie High.
Joe
has been the standout negotiator that Ireland have had? And this is not going to be a popular comment by any means.
Joe O'Reilly.
And
I don't think Charlie would have been.
Joe O'Reilly. When Joe O'Reilly was head of the IMO.
Charlie gave this man the compliment of being the most cunning, the most devious, the most ruthless of the lot of them. One, Bartholomew Ahern.
No,
Bartholomew Ahern has been the greatest negotiator that Ireland have had by reputation, right? By dealing with social partners, the Good Friday Agreement. He negotiated the European Constitution. I can see a track record of his negotiating skills. We know that he told lies, and we know that he didn't have a bank account. We know all that sort of stuff, and we know his career ended in disaster. But there's a track record there where I can see, and from reading how he dealt with people, the stories have come out about everybody in the room thinks Bertie's on their side, right? So Bertie was this star negotiator, right? And there's lots of evidence that he had that skill. He was able to leave everybody in the room thinking that Bertie had their vote. There's the famous thing with Albert Reynolds, where Albert knew he wasn't getting the nomination for president, and Bertie showed him that he'd vote for him. But so he was a skilled negotiator, right? I'm pretty an anorak. I'm pretty much an anorak when it comes to politics. I can't think of any similar stories about Phil Hogan.
There is no track record of a really slick deal, or even a timely one that was done very quickly. The Coveney seems to get stuff done quite quickly, but I mean, if you're talking about a really conniving, bulletproof, savage deal, it has to be the deal Joe O'Reilly did when he was head of the IMO, or he was the president of the IMO, or whatever he was in the IMO at the time, for the GPs, for the over 70s.
James Riley.
James Riley. Yeah,
James
what's
Riley.
I call him? Joe Riley.
Joe,
Jesus, I hope I go James Riley. Yeah, and it's probably around there, you know, I suppose, you see, there's an awful lot with the sort of trade, with the deals that sort of Phil Hogan had in front of him. You know, there's a lot of diplomacy as well, and somehow Phil Hogan treats everything like a club match, you know, like a Kilkenny club match. I don't think we've heard the last of him, in fairness to him. And I think he was shafted by his own. They set him up. They knew he would do exactly that. If you were told on Thursday morning that the bill was like this, you could have played it out. There was going to be another thing right there, another thing, and he'd keep fighting and fighting and fighting. And in the end, even the way he staged it, I'm happy with my decision. He knew that his own crowd had shafted him.
Clear. Who would you prefer at the negotiation table for Brexit? Phil Hogan or Brad McGuinness?
Just before you go into that, if you don't mind, lads, what I would say about the whole Golfgate thing is the very nature that a Supreme Court judge hasn't stepped down. I have a huge problem with that, because what that has now proved, and he's following the footsteps of a woman who did the exact same thing, Moira Whelan, right? They do not believe they are subject to the law the same way I am. And they are not, if they cannot treat the law as if they are equals under it, then they have no business in the judiciary. And as for the Law Library, the Law Society, or whatever, Law Library, who call themselves the Right Honourable Society of Whigs, right? That's their official name. Like, they'd want to do something about the membership, the standards of their members. Because if I had blatant disregard for my own accounts and my own taxes, as they seem to have for the law, which is their bread and butter, of which they're chartered professionals, right? I would be hauled before the ACCA, the Institute of Bankers, the Central Bank, the ISI. I would be hammered. And that is before Revenue got their hands on me. And yet a Supreme Court judge can go from being around the table at the cabinet, writing this legislation, and then deciding it doesn't apply to him. No. So it's the judge, that's where the real trouble should have been. But they put Phil out there because it was silly season, it was August, and they predicted every step of what Phil would do. And in the end, he had to take what they did to him. He was set up by his own. There's no Brian Hayes being there with one or two boys from America was no mistake.
Another smarmy guess.
Well, it doesn't matter
I'd love
anyway.
to know how he gets all the TV slots.
It doesn't matter now anyway, because the British.
All right, we're talking about Brexit. Who should negotiate? I think Mairead McGuinness will do a lot better job around the table. I think she will appeal to more people from other sides around the table than him. I
genuinely don't think it matters now, because the British have changed the game that they're playing by just not by breaking the law. So it doesn't really matter because there's no trust anymore. So.
Well, Barnier has stood. I know he's been a bit of a snot, and he's been quite bit of a dick to Boris and them in the UK.
Barnier is great. He's played
a blinder for Ireland, and he stood up more for the Good Friday Agreement than Phil Hogan ever would.
Yeah, no,
I don't trust the EU. I don't trust the EU.
Well, I think we have to have.
I think they will hang. I think they will hang us out to dry at some stage. I think we'll be used as a pawn if there's a suitable deal to be done that suits the bigger countries. It'll be done, and Ireland will be the casualty.
I don't think so, Derek. I don't think that's the way they'll go, because they tried that at the early stages of the pandemic, and it didn't work out. It sort of went back to bite Angela and Macron in the arse, the way they were trying to play solo to fence their own interests in. But I think Europe needs to remember that we actually can negotiate our own deal. You know what I mean? All agreements and the relationships prior to joining are still existing, which means our relationship with England isn't really changing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's Europe's relationship with the UK is changing, but our relationship, Ireland and the UK's relationship, isn't really changing.
Well, but see, the thing is, how do you protect the single market? And that's so something will have to change.
We've a foot in both camps.
Oh, I know, but what happens if a chlorinated chicken comes in from America and lands up in Belfast and goes down to Dublin, and then from Dublin it can go to Paris and Germany or Berlin or whatever.
Do you know what?
Like,
that's not our job. That's the department's job. That's their problem.
Oh, I know, but it's very, very complicated. And like, I mean, there's huge solutions like United Ireland, maybe even bringing Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Ireland together in some sort of a Celtic nation type scenario. If Scotland and Northern Ireland both want to join the EU, there's big things that there's big things that could happen. I said I don't trust the EU. I like the EU for a lot of what's achieved. I like the fact that there's free movement, there's free travel. I love the fact that we can go to countries without visa. I'm friends with lots of Europeans over here in the States, and it's amazing how much more in common we have with them in terms of culture than we do with some of our American friends. So I like where it is, but I'd like Europe to remain as being a group of nation states rather than a United States of Europe. And I think there's a big push in Europe to go towards that more United States of Europe that I'm suspicious of. I don't like democratic deficit. I don't like I keep mentioning this, the 5 presidents. Like, we're all on here, we all love our politics, but can we name who the 5 presidents are or what they're presidents of? I know I can't. But there are 5 presidents. And like Michel Barnier is like he's like a saint in Ireland. Like Michel Barnier is talking. Let's listen, everybody. What did Michel Barnier say? Right? Or Michel Barnier sends out his spokesman. He's Michel Barnier's spokesperson. And the guy might be brilliant. Maybe he's the European version of Bertie Ahern when it comes to negotiating. But like, he's been appointed by the European Parliament, but there's a democratic deficit there that he's negotiating things that are going to have an impact on my country. There's too much fawning, and I'm not an anti-European in terms of the tin hats and stuff like that. I'm genuinely not. I mentioned Europe has been so positive in many ways, but I don't like the fawning, the lack of critique that we have in Ireland for the European project, and the way we love if somebody gets a title in Europe. When Mairead McGuinness was the whatever role she had in the Parliament, we celebrate this as an achievement. We celebrate your man, the newsreader, Cox. Pat Cox had a position in Europe, and he was. Well,
he was actually he was a fantastic politician. He was a fantastic representative.
Well, you wouldn't know in Ireland because you wouldn't have heard any criticism of him. That's my point. My point is, if somebody gets a position in Europe, it's like
he was hugely regarded, very highly regarded.
Well, we always think people in Europe who get on well are highly regarded. P. Flynn was supposed to be highly regarded until he wasn't. P. Flynn was a great commissioner because he negotiated an $8 million deal. And then we find out then afterwards that he was considered one of the weakest commissioners out there. So
yeah, but Phil would be quite similar to Phil as well. There, I mean, they probably could have been good at their jobs if they got their ego, if they could get their ego to move out of the way, kind of thing. Look at we won't have much of a say really in the EU Brexit negotiations, only insofar as that Barnier in Europe have been far bigger supporters of the Good Friday Agreement, far more than Coveney has actually, and all his crew in whatever the secret societies of Bilderberg and all that carry on, right? But It's going to be an interesting 6 months, definitely, on the Brexit front.
Well,
I'm looking forward to it now, actually.
definitely be talking about it.
I should get my dual national and reboot my dual citizenship.
We'll definitely be talking about it again next week. We're coming to the end, though, Vanessa, but before we do the wrap up, who's your man behind you who's in the tight spandex?
Do you not recognise him? That's the
his mask on. How could I recognise him?
That's Sam Bennett. He's playing. He's the Tour de France is on at the moment. So every afternoon here, there's these roaring in the front room here, screaming, cheering him on. He's the green point. He's got the green jersey, which means he's the points winner at the moment.
There's
Sean Kelly's old town, right?
He's an Irish rider
from Carrigan-Shannon. Sean Kelly's old town.
Yeah.
Following in Kelly's footsteps.
The Wheelers. Yeah.
I didn't realize he had the green jersey. God, I'm gonna have to tune in.
Yeah, yesterday he got it. Yeah. So that it's from yesterday. Actually, I have a great picture there of the crush. Sorry that.
I thought you'd have Diana Rigg up as a picture of the week, Vanessa.
I actually tried to get it up, but it wouldn't. I think I'm going to have to upgrade the whole graphics thing anyway. I had a fabulous picture of Diana Rigg, and I got it as her the same age as I am, and she looked fabulous. She put shame on you, but I'll hopefully get one up next week. But I have a picture there, the crush. Can you see that there, guys?
Yeah.
Right, but when it's like that, do you know this like the start of a Grand Prix or something? That this is the end of the race where they're all bombing it to get the time, the last stretch. But it is literally like they're digging and kicking and shoving each other on the bikes, and it's like the first corner of the Grand Prix where they just fucking go for it. They don't care who's in their way or who's in their rear, and they are. It is. You kind of probably don't see it on the screens or on the telly, but when you're on the street, they're spitting and killing.
It's very physical. You can see the physicality of it. Very physical. Yeah. So
we're all cheering on for Sam anyway. We might there might be another Irish winner of the Tour de France yet. So I wonder, will it be Leo or Miho will go over to Paris and try and photobomb the?
It'll have to be Eamon Ryan because cycling, it'll have to send Eamon. Give him the nod.
Oh, I said they'll all be at it.
Give him the nod off. You mean?
What's new on TV, guys? Just before we go.
I'm out of touch. The only thing I've watched is I've watched two things actually. There's a TV show on both Netflix there's one show called Away, which is a sci-fi drama with Hilary Swank, and a friend of mine is in it as well actually. But it's I found it a dab boring. It is very much drama based as opposed to sci-fi. Just so happens to be set in space, but very boring, very quick for me. It's a little cliche. The performances are excellent. It's on Netflix. It's popular. The other thing I watched, which is seemingly very popular in Ireland, is a movie called I See. Oh God, now I'm forgetting the name. Is it ICU? It is ICU. Yeah, and it has a rather unusual looking Helen Hunt. I don't know if that's the right word you'd use. I don't. You obviously haven't seen it, but Helen Hunt. So
the Oscar winner.
I think she must have had something go on to her face that didn't go to plan because. Yeah, she doesn't look great. I don't mean to be knocking someone's appearance.
Is it the letters or the?
No, the words, as in I see you there. It starts. That's kind of creepy. It's a mystery at first. There's a lot of twists and turns in it. It does keep the twists and turns up. Personally, I enjoyed the first half of it more than the second half because once the reveal happens, while there is twists after that are very clever, it kind of lost its. It lost the mystery. I do enjoy the mystery, but yeah, that didn't hit the cinemas, which is unusual because it would be deemed worthy of a theatrical release, in my opinion. But then again,
cinemas are closed though.
Yeah, but this was out last year. That's what I was.
I started to. Oh, sorry.
Did you not see that? We have to cancel Netflix. Cancel Netflix is trending number 1 on Twitter. The share price is down over 20% before I came onto this program.
What did they do?
Well, I'm not a shareholder, so quite frankly, I don't give a shite.
Well, you wish you were because their share price for Netflix went up 300% in the first year.
Lads, I have the price of a pint. How many pint shapes?
A fella told me 2 years ago to put everything I had into Netflix, and he said you can't go wrong. And
did you?
I didn't have anything to put into it. So, but I, as I saw the price going up, I kept going mad. But it's the share price is down 20% today, because they had a program called
Cuties. I'm seeing it here now. Cuties.
And it's I just saw the Twitter feed. I just saw some clips. I didn't even click on them because it just looks like it's pedophilia, and it's young kids dancing in very sexualized manner, 11-year-old girls, and I only saw the Twitter headline, but it's certainly from what they were showing on the Twitter feed. I know Twitter is very eager to cancel everything. We'll all be cancelled soon.
Yeah, do you know, it's not just Twitter.
But certainly the sexualization of 11-year-olds is beyond the pale. But on a more positive note, two good things. One is there's a series on Amazon, the All or Nothing series, and at the moment the one I'm looking at is Tottenham Hotspur, and it shows the sacking of Maurizio Pochettino and the hiring of Jose Mourinho as manager. And it's a fly in the wall documentary, and it's pretty good. It gives you a really good insight into what's going on in Spurs.
Is Jose Jose in it, or is he in his moody days?
You'll be surprised at Jose. I think in some regards, the language, everything is like F this and F that, and also how unsophisticated some of his team talks are. A lot of it is like heart and passion stuff that you would have heard playing Junior B Gaelic football in Ireland. I'm sure that there's more stuff to it that we don't get to see, but for what we're seeing, he seems to be very much like a heart and passion guy as opposed to a technical genius. There was one really good spot where he was trying to get his players to be more nasty, and he was able to point out to them who was on the yellow cards in the other team, and bear that in mind. If a chance arises that they're on a yellow card, then you be aware that they're on a yellow card. And sure enough, in the game, in the second half, they got the other player sent off. So that was interesting. But it's a really, even if you're not into football from a human interest point of view, it's really good. And then if you are into football, the Premier League is back Saturday, new season. And not only that, the NFL is back tonight, American football.
Well, on that.
Sorry, I'm fucking ass now.
Okay, I'm now talking to my audience instead of my fellow colleagues here. All right.
Well, I started a few things. I started this Lovecraft.
Oh yeah, it's getting the HP Lovecraft.
Yeah, Lovecraft Country. Very strange, but my God, I just don't know where it's taken me. But it's so well crafted. The acting in it, the styling in it, the finish, the lines. It's Lovecraft Country. It catches you completely unawares. I don't know how I know it's based on a book, I think, but just the entire premise of it, like it's very easy to say, oh, it's a guy traveling, in segregated 50s America going across country. And he's got his uncle with him, and his uncle kind of makes these guides for safe Negro travel, and they have like a singer, kind of a singer in a band, one of his schoolmates, and they were members of a science fiction club in school, and it just goes into these. It's just taken me on a different way, but it's so stylish. I'm okay. Like I've only just started into it, but I would recommend it. It's called Lovecraft Country. The other thing I've started, what name?
Just on that, just to educate you, Vanessa, I'm going to mansplain it now. It is getting very well reviewed. I haven't watched it yet, but it's inspired by the works of H.P. Lovecraft, who was very anti-Irish. Just want to put that out there. He had a very strong anti-Irish views. But
so was Bond. He hated us. He hated women as well, actually. It's a pity he didn't live to see fucking envy him. Turned out to be Dame Judi Dench. Or that, who's the girl, the big tall black lady, the model, the supermodel, Naomi Campbell.
Grace Jones? Oh.
No, she bought his house in Jamaica. I'd say that would have killed him altogether. Yeah, well. So,
What's the other one?
It's in his second series, or maybe his third series, I don't know. But I landed on it anyway, and it's called Yellowstone. Kevin Costner's in it. It's set in Missouri, I think. So the big farm estates. It's big ranchers anyway. The big and big huge rancher, and everyone on the ranch has is branded Yellowstone, the name of the ranch. And one of the sons is off. He married one of the girls from the reservation, and anyway, it's the seeds have started for a massive clan war, and it's kind of like Dallas. It's a new Dallas actually. So I'll watch another few episodes as to whether I keep going or not. But it is, if you could say it is actually, and it has the makings of another Dallas, but not in the oil industry. Now it's in ranching, farming, cattle. Big money. Where this is one of these ranches where they go around in choppers, not in tractors or buggies.
On that note, it's getting
are in, folks.
It's getting near bedtime. We've run over time. If you want to look at the papers, look at the site and talk about them in the comment section.
No. I just have a quick look there. Well, it's pretty much a lot of Diana Rigg is on a good few of the front pages.
Yeah.
Oh, she was beautiful. But she was a new Avenger before my time. I was the new Avenger. It was Joanna Lumley as Purdy was my new Avenger icon.
There you go. Awkward silence.
Anyway, folks, sorry about the messing with the camera and the internet going down. Missing all the talk about Trump, but I have some news for you from Trump. A very well-known broadsheeter, Johnny Green, who was with us from the Black Lives Matter march back in June, was it? July?
Yeah.
He's sending me over a big bag of Trump merchandise. So we'll figure out a way to raffle it off.
Do a competition on the site and all that. You've been watching Broadsheet on the telly. Big thanks to our panel tonight, celebrity accountant Vanessa Foran.
Night, everyone.
Celebrity teacher Derek O'Donoghue. Sorry, Derek, it was celebrity something.
I was in 2 films that have
We know. We know.
Yeah,
you've told us that. I think pretty much every show you remind us to. If those of you in the chat pit, JDF Reality and Owen, thanks for your inputs. We're back on the site tomorrow, where no doubt you'll have a lot of things to say about a lot of things happening in the world. Thanks for tuning in. That's the best I can do. I want to go.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in. Good night. Have a nice weekend. Stay safe. Wear a mask, etc., etc. Bye.
Bye.